In the game of baseball, there is a special place. A place found deep inside anyone who's ever put bat to ball. A place built by tradition and lit by the warm glow of memory. A place where the boys of summer dream about fall. It doesn't matter what jersey they wear. This is where they play their best. A cherished and fertile proving ground where legends are cultivated. A field of dreamers. They come to fulfill a promise to themselves, to write an epic story on diamond-shaped pages. Awards are for the mantle, numbers for the history books. This is about the game. Every generation has their chance to rewrite the mythology, to add the present to our pastime, to succumb to the eternal rhythms of 6-4-3. It's as pure as the smile on a face, and as powerful as history in the making. And no matter where the game has taken them, they still long to come back. They have built it, and now we have come. The magic of the postseason unfolds next. It isn't heaven, but it's pretty darn close.
The voice of Ray Liotta, who walked out of that Iowa cornfield as Shoeless Joe Jackson in the film Field of Dreams. Some 47,000 will fill Busch Stadium today. They drew more than 3.3 million for the year, second in the major leagues to the Dodgers, and this has become almost a perennial event in St. Louis. October baseball, but doesn't feel like October. Temperatures will be in the 80s today for Game 2. We welcome you to this Division Series telecast on MLB Network, presented by Geico on MLB Network. With Jim Cott, I'm Bob Costas. Yesterday behind Adam Wainwright, who pitched brilliantly and won his 20th game of the season, 19 in the regular year, and tacking one on at the beginning of this division series. And with the help of a 3-run homer from Carlos Beltran, the Cardinals cruised 9-1. But Clint Hurdle's looking at it this way. If he gets a good game today out of the young right-hander Garrett Cole, they're back in business with Liriano set to start Game 3 in Pittsburgh.
Boy, Bob, great time of the year to be a baseball fan. I'm sure happy to be a part of it, and happy to look at these two pitchers today. You mentioned young Garrett Cole, 10-7 on the year, but in September, 4-0. Now, there might be as much pressure on Lance Lynn as there is on Garrett Cole, because, as you mentioned, the Cardinals do not want to go back to Pittsburgh tied at 1. Lance Lynn, 15-10, started out well, hit a little valley. Like Cole, has been very effective in September.
Obviously, in a short series, every game matters, but how pivotal is this one? Consider that Francisco Liriano has won his last 3 starts against the Cardinals. He's especially effective in Pittsburgh, where the Pirates have won 7 of 10 this year against St. Louis, and St. Louis is under 500 for the year, despite having the best record in the National League. Under 500 for the year against left-handed pitching. So, again, coming out of here with a split would be just fine with Clint Hurdle. Marquee names throughout the lineups, but at least 3 will be somewhere on almost everybody's MVP ballot.
Well, when you look at these 3 MVP candidates, let's start with Andrew McCutchen. And with McCutchen, you look beyond the numbers. As Clint Hurdle says, he can beat you 5 ways: with his power, with his average, his legs, his glove, his speed. Yadier Molina will neutralize the Pittsburgh running game. Matt Carpenter, who has set a doubles record for left-hand hitters, passing the great Stan Musial. All 3 of those legitimate most valuable player candidates.
So we're just about set for Game 2 of this Division Series matchup. We'll be back with the starting lineups and the first pitch from St. Louis in just a moment. Lynn heads for the mound, 15-10 for the year after a 10-1 start. There was a point not that long ago when his spot in the postseason rotation was in doubt, but a strong September, which included the division winner against the Cubs on the last weekend, secured his spot, and he's set to face this lineup in Game 2. It's sponsored by Geico. Marte, Walker, and McCutchen. Morneau over from the Twins. Bird, Alvarez, Martin, Mercer, and Cole. It wasn't too long ago that the Pirates were always sellers at the trade deadline, but this year, as a legitimate contender, they picked up Marlon Bird, Justin Morneau, and the backup catcher John Buck.
And all very significant, particularly Marlon Bird. And they'll face Lance Lynn. You see his numbers. Bob mentioned off to a great start, hit a little valley, overall 15-10, but really regained his spot in the rotation by pitching very well in September.
Over his last 4 starts, he's pitched to an ERA of 1.09 and struck out 30 in 25 innings of work. 2-1 against the Pirates this year in 5 starts.
Baseball like we dreamed it would be. Green grass, blue skies, day game, full stadium.
David Freese in close at third, just in case Marte lays one down. Ball 1. Wally Bell has the plate. Jerry Lane, the crew chief, at first. Sam Holbrook at second. Jim Joyce at third. Left field line, Paul Nart. Right field line, Tony Randazzo. All the umps have significant postseason experience. A line drive foul, and it sounded like he might have broken his bat.
And that would be the two-seam fastball. Talking to Derek Lilliquist, the pitching coach for the Cardinals, he said Lynn will throw a 4-seamer, and for you fans out there, that's a ball that doesn't move a lot. There's Derek. A 2-seamer will run in on the right-hand hitter like that one did to Marte.
You look at Lynn, he's 26 years old, 6'5", listed at the beginning of the year at 240. But he lost about 40 pounds in the offseason and shaved his beard and cut his hair in the process. His 1-1 pitch, Marte running up as if to bunt and didn't offer at it, according to Jerry Lane. 2 balls and a strike. So Lance Lynn has undergone the kind of transformation that you normally associate with somebody who's under the Federal Witness Protection Program.
Now, the count says, oh, now they switched it to 2-1. It looked like they had called that a strike, and they reversed it.
Jerry Lane signaled safe at first base. Marte had 10 bunt hits during the season, the most in the National League. Well, some confusion on the count.
Well,
Jerry Lane signaled safe at first, which led us to believe, and the graphics guy, that the count was 2-1, but it was 1-2, and this is strike 3.
Yeah, Wally Bell did put up the right arm, and there again the free-swinging Pirates, much more so than the Cardinals, will chase pitches like that out of the strike zone.
Six of Neil Walker's 16 home runs came in the last 9 games of the regular season. A strike to the switch hitter. Lance Lynn was 9-3 at home this year, just 6-7 with an ERA upwards of 5 on the road. So that was a factor in the decision to start him here in Game 2. Game 3, Joe Kelly, hard-throwing right-hander against the lefty Francisco Liriano. And then Game 4, if there is one, Charlie Morton for the Bucks. And Mike Matheny told us just before the game he's decided on rookie Michael Wacha rather than Shelby Miller in Game 4. That'll make the seats. Wacha flirted with a no-hitter. In fact, went 8 2/3 against the Nationals in his last regular season start before an infield hit deprived him of the no-hitter. And with that in mind, he'll be the choice if there is a Game 4. Lynn's 1-2 pitch to Walker. He starts the game with a pair of strikeouts.
Well, let's take a look at the breakdown on Lance Lynn, brought to you by Expedia. And right at the top, keep doing what you're doing in September. And boy, has he ever, by striking out the first two hitters. He's young. He's only 26. But he already has quite a bit of postseason experience. And he's comfortable here, Bob. As you mentioned, his record at Busch Stadium, much more comfortable pitching at home than on the road.
In tight to McCutchen. Third in the MVP balloting a year ago, behind Buster Posey of the Giants, who won it, and Ryan Braun of the Brewers, who finished second. He'll get a lot of support for the award this year. As we look at Lynn, some of you may be shaking your heads. He used to have a very scruffy beard. He's actually trimmed the beard rather than removing it.
Last year he could have pitched for the Red Sox.
Yeah, had that Duck Dynasty look going. 2-1.
College ball at the University of Mississippi. Lance Lynn.
Just his third year in the majors, but this is already his 17th postseason appearance. Most of the previous ones have been in relief. Sliced the other way, and it'll get down for a base hit. Beltran comes up with it, and McCutchen has a 2-out single.
Let's check out the defense behind Lance Lynn for the Cardinals. Matt Holliday, John Jay, Carlos Beltran around the outfield. Beltran with 3 Gold Gloves. Freese, Descalzo, Carpenter, and Matt Adams around the infield. And, of course, the gold standard, perennial Gold Glove winner, Yadier Molina, behind the plate catching Lance Lynn. And that will have an influence on whether McCutchen decides to try to steal here.
He swiped 27 for the year and was caught 10 times. Justin Morneau in the cleanup spot, fouls one back. Postseason experience with the Twins in 04 and 06. In 06, he was the American League's MVP when he hit .321 with 34 homers and 130 RBIs. He's had 77 at-bats as a Pirate without hitting a home run. He had 17 while still with Minnesota. McCutchen edging away from first. Adams holding him on, not going anywhere. And that one gets the outside corner, 1-2.
Good pitch by Lynn. Moving back across the outside corner.
Two and two. The Pirates like to run, but here's a remarkable statistic. Since 2005, when Molina became the regular catcher, the Cardinals have allowed 458 stolen bases. Far and away the fewest in the majors. The second least, 688 by the Reds. That's the Molina effect. In the dirt, 3-2. Now, not every one of those games was caught by Molina, but the vast, vast majority were. The Cardinals' staff ERA nearly a run lower in the games Molina catches as opposed to those when he sits. Now McCutchen, of course, will go, and Adams moves behind him. And Morneau hits one softly into right. Beltran has it lined up. No runs, a hit, a man is left. A couple of strikeouts notched by Lynn. Cardinals coming up in the first. Brock Cardinals of the 60s or 70s or Whitey Herzog's Jackrabbits of the 80s. They are flat last in stolen bases. They are 13th out of 15 teams in home runs, and yet remarkably, they lead the league by a wide margin in runs scored. Why? An almost preposterous team batting average of .330 with runners in scoring position, led by Alan Craig, who is not on the roster for the division series because of a left leg sprain. Mike Matheny told us before the game that he's optimistic that Craig will return if they make it as far as the LCS, but they have a bunch of other guys who are well over .300 with runners in scoring position. They hit a lot of doubles, so guys are in scoring position almost right away.
Good two-strike hitters. That's what Garrett Cole will be faced with today.
Here's Carpenter. Spun away by Cole. He hit .318 for the year, 11 homers, but 55 doubles and 7 triples.
4-pitch pitcher, Garrett Cole, as you can see from that pitch. Live fastball, slider, change. And the pitch that has really sort of changed his effectiveness for the good for the Pirates is his curveball in September. It's given him a lot more variance and speed than his early starts.
Made his fastball even better. The curve has become a swing and miss pitch for him. As you see. And in September, he was 4-0 with an ERA of 1.69. 2-2 to Carpenter. Mercer, the shortstop, is tucked over near second base. Alvarez, the third baseman, way off the line. All teams do this to a certain extent, but the Pirates do it more than most in terms of shifts and sophisticated defensive positioning based on the new metrics. Roll it to Walker right at him, and that takes care of Carpenter.
Well, let's take a look at Garrett Cole. Today's breakdown brought to you by Expedia. If I could whisper in Garrett Cole's ear based on previous experience, I would say, pitch like you're in the playground. Don't pay too much attention to scouting reports. Breathe in slowly, breathe out slowly, and look at Russell Martin's glove. I think A.J. Burnett got a little distracted yesterday. You look at the hitters, the fans. Looks like he's zoned in so far. But the challenge, the first time through the batting order, the Cardinal team has not seen him establish your fastball, try to minimize your number of pitches, and get through that batting order as economically as possible.
Beltran punished an A.J. Burnett pitch, hit it 443 feet toward the second deck in right for a 3-run homer that was part of a 7-run third inning. And Burnett was chased, and the game was over right there. Cole's 0-1 pitch. A drive toward the gap in right center field, and this one is off the top of the wall. Beltran on his way to second. Boy, when the calendar flips from September to October, he goes from being an all-star to an all-timer. Let's see, it may have taken a skip before going over the wall.
Fastball up in the strike zone. You can see Martin's target, obviously not where Cole wanted to throw it. And as you mentioned, in October, you don't get by with any mistakes to Carlos Beltran.
So a 1-out double. And here's another one of those situations. Holiday with a man in scoring position. He hit .390 in these situations for the season. In for a strike.
I think, Bob, in talking to Mike Matheny, he mentioned up and down the lineup what pride, as you see Mike behind the camera there, the Cardinal hitters take in this approach with men in scoring position. They won't flail at a lot of bad pitches.
He lost one to left. Easy chance for Marte. And that's the second out. Beltran tagging to draw a throw, and it'll be up to Matt Adams.
Check out the Pirates defense behind Garrett Cole. Not as many gold gloves out there as the Cardinals can present, but Starling Marte in left. McCutchen has a gold glove. He's in center. Marlon Byrd in right. Pedro Alvarez, Jordy Mercer, Neil Walker, Justin Morneau are on the infield, and Russell Martin, a gold glover behind the plate.
So here's Adams playing first base and hitting cleanup in place of Alan Craig. He's more than held up his end of it, except when he comes off the bench and when Daniel Descalso replaces Cosma at shortstop, it weakens what was one of the strongest benches in the National League. Adams hit .326 with 8 homers in September after Craig hit the disabled list. The 1-1 pitch, down and in. Adams was the 699th player taken in the 2009 amateur draft. Molina awaiting his chance next if they can pass the baton. The Cardinals have always drafted well, and maybe even more important, they develop players well. They arrive out of their farm system major league ready. He gets under this one and lofts it into right. And it will be Marlon Byrd to end the inning. So a double by Beltran goes to waste. And after one, no score in St. Louis. Sponsored in part by Lee, introducing the new Lee Modern Series for men, designed to look better, crafted to fit better, and by the Lincoln Motor Company. Why, you ask? We'll be showing you hockey players, football players, and basketball players. Well, the Vancouver Canucks, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and for a while the Sacramento Kings had the longest losing streaks in their respective sports season to season. But 20 straight years with a losing record is the longest such span in American team sports, or North American if we throw in Vancouver. A ball and a strike to Marlon Byrd as he leads off in the Pirates' second. That isn't just a string of years without a postseason appearance. Those are all sub-500 years. So for a long time in Pittsburgh, hopes weren't dashed. For years, hopes didn't exist. Then the last 2 years, they were in first place in July before the bottom fell out and they slipped under 500. This year, they put it all together and grabbed the wild card. Pedro Alvarez on deck. Lynn struck out 2 in the first. His 2-2 to Bird. Runs the count out full. Marlon Bird played 1,250 regular season games with various teams before he got a taste of the postseason. And in his very first at-bat in the one-game wild card playoff with the Reds, he hit one out against Johnny Cueto. Third strikeout of the afternoon for Lynn. Sam Ryan is with us today at Busch Stadium. Let's check in with her. Sam?
Well, Bob, earlier you were talking about the Lance Lynn transformation. He dropped 40 pounds from December of last year to spring training of this year. He told me basically he cut out everything except for meat and vegetables. No starch, no carbs, no sweets whatsoever. He said he didn't cheat at all. They call it the paleo diet. He said it's more like the caveman diet. You really just eat the meat and the vegetables and that's it. And he said really the thing is he has a lot of energy too. And you did mention shaved the beard a bit. He cut off some hair. So that probably attributes to about 10 pounds of the weight loss, Bob.
Give or take.
Well, I'm going to try that. You more energy, more zip on you. I'll tell you one thing it's done is he can repeat his delivery. He's got a lot more of a streamlined delivery and a faster pace out on the mound.
1-1 the count to Alvarez, whose 36 home runs tied him with the D-backs Paul Goldschmidt for the National League lead. Smacks this one to center. John Jay started in, misjudged it, now races back, and it's over his head. Jay, it'll be a ground rule double. Jay is normally a very good center fielder. He got a bad read on that ball, started in, and it sailed over his head.
Not to make excuses for John Jay, but part of that is daytime baseball. Oftentimes in the late afternoon, the shadows bother you, but I don't think he read this ball off the bat as quickly as he normally would. He was going to drift. You'll see him in your picture there. He just starts to drift, and then he has to run back toward the wall and can't get there in time.
So the second hit of the day for the Pirates off Lynn, and it brings up Russell Martin. Pops one back. Molina has a play and can't make it.
Wow.
Wow.
Wall shy. Got a little wall shy there at the last minute. I think Yadier couldn't quite feel where his feet were on the warning track. He had plenty of room, and it's a play he normally would make.
Not scored as an error, simply a no play. But the Cardinals, whose 75 errors tied them with Arizona for the fewest in the National League, have had a couple of misplays, neither scored as an error here in the second. Lynn trying to work around it all. Misses with that one. Russell Martin hit just .226 with 15 home runs, but 6 of those homers came against the Cardinals. And as you may recall in the wild card game the other night against Cincinnati, he hit 2 of them out. One and two.
Good breaking ball from Lynn. You see it start off the inside corner and had a good late, actually a 2-plane breaking ball. Broke over and down. Best kind to have.
All 3 swinging third strikes for the Pirates so far have come on curveballs. Lynn now ahead of Martin, 1 and 2.
It's another thing as a pitcher you can have comfort in doing. That pitch right there in the dirt, when you know you have Yadier Molina back there and you got hitters that chase curveballs in the dirt, you don't worry too much about a wild pitch because that guy will block them.
Did Martin check his swing? He did not.
Well, get ahead and expand the zone. Good sweeping breaking ball. And Martin, this is what the first base umpire is looking at, clearly went through the hitting zone.
And now Jordy Mercer, the number 8 hitter, with Garrett Cole, the pitcher, on deck and first base open, and they'll walk him intentionally. Cole is not that bad a hitter. He was 7 for 34 on the year, which is 206. Not bad for a pitcher.
Well, I think it points up how Mike Matheny feels this is going to be a low-scoring game. Oftentimes, during the season, you wouldn't see the number 8 hitter walk to get to the pitcher in the second inning. But the caliber of pitcher that Cole is, and you figure a low-scoring game, he's going to play the percentages right here.
Clinton Merrick Hurdle, at age 56, enjoying the ride of his baseball life. And a long and winding baseball road took him through St. Louis in 1986 when he played for Whitey Herzog. Just his luck in between the Cardinal pennant years of 85 and 87.
He's got some great lines. He's become quite the quipster. Amazing how far he's come from that cover boy of Sports Illustrated back in 1978 when everybody had high hopes for him to be the next superstar in baseball.
A lot of baseball people thought he would be exactly that. He was a useful big leaguer with several teams, but never really blossomed into an all-star. Alvarez at second, Mercer at first with 2 out. What was it that Hurdle said way back then? Even as a youngster, he had a sense of humor. He said, if I had done everything I was supposed to do, I'd be leading the league in batting, in home runs, have given $100,000 to charity, and I would have married Marie Osmond.
Yeah.
None of which transpired.
Right.
Well, there's Cole up the middle for a base hit. Jay charging. Alvarez to the plate. Here's the throw. It's close, but he slides in safely. And the Pirates have a 1-0 lead on the Cole RBI hit.
Wow. Took a page out of the Cardinal book. You mentioned he was not that bad a hitter as a pitcher. Man in scoring position as a pitcher, all you hope to do is just make some contact, take it up the middle, and that's exactly what Cole did. Looked like he got a fastball above the belt, played well by Jay.
And Alvarez gets the left hand in to score the game's first run. Back to the top for Starling Marte, who struck out swinging to start the game. And he's hit by a pitch. Well, the book on Lynn has always been overpowering stuff. Nothing wrong with his mechanics. The big question, demeanor. Adam Wainwright has worked with him. Derek Lilliquist, the pitching coach. Chris Carpenter, who's kind of an emeritus member of the team, to try and get him into a mindset where if things start to unravel, you don't unravel with it. Pitch through adversity.
Yeah, that's a combination, I think, of what you referred to. And also, if you look at the number of times Starling Marte gets hit, he doesn't move out of the way. I think he gets hit by pitches as often as he walks.
In fact, look at that.
Yeah.
He got only one more walk than hit by pitch for the season.
You know, that pitch is up and in where sometimes you'd see a hitter turn his back to it and get his elbow out of the way, and Marte, no.
Now,
perfectly legal.
Yeah. You want to throw it at me? I'll just stay right here. Well, now a big chance for Neil Walker. Rolls it to Carpenter. That'll minimize the damage. The Pirates score 1 and leave the bases loaded. To the bottom of the second, 1-zip Bucks. Cotton. Bob Costas at Busch Stadium, where the Cardinals come up in the bottom of the second, trailing 1-0. Arch looming over the banks of the Mississippi in a baseball-mad town.
Always has been. I know the Yankees have more championships, but over the years, I don't think you can find a better fan base or consistent baseball team year after year that the Cardinals produce.
Their 10th postseason appearance in the last 14 years. They've won 11 World Series, most of any National League team. 18 pennants. A rich and colorful history. Yadier Molina swings on the first pitch, and racing over to take it is McCutchen. What was it that Lawrence McCutchen said? He wears those dreadlocks, very fashionable, and Larry Fitzgerald, the outstanding receiver for the Arizona Cardinals, went to the University of Pittsburgh. And the last couple of years when McCutchen has really blossomed as a superstar, he said, well, one thing, at least I'm finally not mistaken for Larry Fitzgerald anymore.
Yeah.
Did I say Lawrence McCutchen?
I was thinking
I was in a football.
Ready for football.
No, I was in a football mode talking about Larry Fitzgerald.
Right.
Lawrence McCutchen would be the old-time Los Angeles Rams running back.
Exactly, yeah.
All right, allow me to clear my head. Andrew McCutchen with a nice catch. And here's John Jay. Cole quickly ahead of him, 0-2.
John Jay has benefited from the great year that Matt Carpenter has had. He was a leadoff hitter last year, but now down in that 6-hole, he's become quite a productive force for the Cardinals.
Goes the other way. This one is foul. Got a little piece of it. Hard to believe that John Jay led the Cardinals with just 10 stolen bases this year. This is the team that used to feature Vince Coleman and Ozzie Smith and Willie McGee and Tommy Herr, and back prior to that, Lou Brock.
They'd steal that many in a week.
Maybe in a doubleheader. Another 1-2 pitch. Evens the count. With David Freese waiting on deck. Here's Lou Brock. Among those honored on the wall. Red Champions.
Yeah, they got quite a collection of them here. Jack Buck.
Stan the Man passed away in January. Enos Slaughter. Tony La Russa. Ken Boyer. Dizzy Dean. There's Lou Brock. And Whitey Herzog. Here's Mercer to his left. From the outfield grass, he gets Jay.
I'm impressed early in this game with the variety of pitches that Garrett Cole is throwing. Talking to Ray Searage, our pitching coach, he was very complimentary of the fact that he has learned to command 4 pitches early in his career, and in this kind of playoff atmosphere, he's used curve, he's used his slider, he's used his change and his fastball.
David Freese, the MVP of both the NLCS and the World Series 2 years ago, hit .262 for the year. Yesterday went 2 for 4 with a couple of RBIs and made a terrific lunging backhanded stab of a shot off the bat of Clint Barnes. That's out of play. A ball and a strike. So Freese, although he hasn't delivered during the regular season as he would have hoped to, again, he has a terrific postseason history like so many of these Cardinals.
He might be an attractive commodity in the offseason because they have young Colton Wong, who is on the roster, outstanding second baseman. Matt Carpenter could move to third. Freese might be expendable next year. There's Colton Wong.
Called strike, 2-2. Garrett Cole gave himself the 1-0 lead with an RBI hit after they had intentionally walked Jordy Mercer in the top of the inning. Right back to him, and he works a perfect second. After 2 in St. Louis, Cole and the Pirates lead Freese and the Cardinals 1-0. So far as we know, to the former Ram running back Lawrence McCutcheon. Andrews singled his first time up. In right field, Beltran toward the line into foul ground for the catch.
Well, they won't show up as errors, but this Cardinal team, known for being a pretty good defensive team, a couple of slip-ups here in the second inning. John Jay gets a bad break, misplays this ball. That goes for a two-base hit. And then Yadier Molina, plenty of room. They walk the number 8 hitter to get to the pitcher. And that's what all helped the Pirates take a 1-0 lead.
Morneau flied out his first time up. Strike one. Over the course of the season, Lance Lynn threw his fastball 73% of the time, one of the highest percentages in the major leagues. And all effective pitchers, just about, work off the fastball. You need fastball command. But late in the season, as he surged in September, and so far in notching 4 strikeouts early in this game, it's been his curveball that has often been the put-away pitch.
Talking with Derek Lilliquist, as you just saw in your picture, former outstanding collegiate pitcher and hitter in his own right at the University of Georgia.
Morneau lines one to left center. It drops for a hit.
And I think what factors into that, Bob, is that these teams played 19 times this year. Now you see each other in the postseason. It's not like the World Series where all of a sudden, oh, these are new guys. So Lynn has seen a lot of these hitters, and they're probably saying, well, let's go a little different pattern to them and throw more breaking balls than we did early in the year.
Fourth Pirate hit off Lynn. Morneau at first with one out for Bird, who struck out swinging in the second. 19 regular season meetings, plus yesterday's division series opener. Neither team has established an edge. Molina throws down to first, but skipping back is Morneau. They've split 20 games to this point. Cardinals have won 7 of 10 here. Pirates 7 of 10 in Pittsburgh.
There's a play right here. Talk about a goal. Watch this pick by Molina. Backhand, didn't really have time to shift the body out there. You know, there's just a very subtle play that saves a base. Without that, Morneau's in scoring position.
Right field, Beltran comes on to take it, pegs to first, and scampering back ahead of the throw is Morneau.
Well, Morneau didn't know for sure. Is it going to drop in? No, and Beltran on the run throws a laser to Matt Adams, and Morneau just slides back in time.
Morneau was kind of in no man's land because it looked like it might drop. And then Beltran closed ground on it. And Morneau had to reverse his field and get back to first. Here's Alvarez. Double to right center his first time up. His home run yesterday off Adam Wainwright was the only Pirate run in a 9-1 shellacking. Hits this one right on the nose, and Jay goes back. He goes way back to the wall, and it's gone. A double and a homer for Alvarez. And a 3-0 Pirate lead. Well, it's early yet. It's only the third, and it's only 3-0.
Wow.
But
this was a laser. You see Molina reach up in the strike zone. Not many left-hand hitters get on top of that fastball like Alvarez did and drive a line drive over the center field wall. See, most lefties, low ball hitters, but you see the location there up in the strike zone, and Alvarez got that top hand on top of it and hit about a 420-foot line drive.
(3-0) now to Martin.
Yeah, and this is what you referred to earlier. Here's the challenge now with Lynn. He tends to maybe. He's got to slow the game down right now. Gets to rushing his motion a little bit.
Well, we said earlier that if the Pirates can get out of here with a split, which is all the visiting team tends to want in a series like this as it opens up. Rolled foul. They have Francisco Liriano ready to go. He's won his last 3 starts against the Cardinals. The Cardinals are sub 500 at 19-23 for the year against left-handers. They've lost 7 of 10 in Pittsburgh. Liriano is especially effective at home. 2 of a possible remaining 3 games would be in Pittsburgh. The advantage would kind of shift to Clint Hurdle's side. Misses with the payoff pitch and a 2-out walk for Martin.
And no question about that. And I know there's a lot of talk about home field advantage in all cities, but I have never heard so much buzz about the atmosphere that the Pirate fans created in that playoff game against the Reds. I mean, that was just over the top, and that's what this team will have going for them if they go back home with a split.
Mike Matheny told us before the game he wouldn't wait long to go to his bullpen if Lynn got in trouble, and Shelby Miller is already up and throwing. Mercer received an intentional walk in the second. Then Garrett Cole made the Cardinals pay with a sharp RBI single up the middle. Miller might have been the Game 4 starter for the Cardinals, if there is to be one. But Matheny decided that he would go with the rookie Michael Wacha, who nearly pitched a no-hitter in his last regular season start against the Nats. So that makes Miller available as a long man in this series.
You know, Russell Martin, not your average catcher in terms of speed. And right now, with Mercer at the plate, keep the pitcher from leading off the next inning. Might see him try to steal one.
But he knows that his fellow catcher, Yadier Molina, has cut down nearly half of those who've tried to steal.
But still, if you get thrown out, I think Clint Hurdle, even though Cole got a hit, he would rather have Mercer leading off, and should he get on, use Cole to bunt.
But still worth noting, 89 steals for a catcher, not bad. That would be for his career, not for a season. Reaches for it, rolls it to Freeze across the diamond. That takes care of Mercer and the Pirates. But the 2-run homer from Alvarez makes it 3-0 Pittsburgh in the middle of the third. And then the nightcap, Tigers and the A's from Oakland. A full day and night of baseball action on TBS. Garrett Cole has 3 runs worth of breathing room as he goes back to the mound for the bottom of the third to face Daniel Descalso, then the pitcher spot, and Matt Carpenter. Cole is 6'4" and 230. He's 23 years old, from Newport Beach, California. The Yankees took him in the first round of the '08 draft, but he opted to stay close to home and go to UCLA. Then the Pirates took him in round 1 3 years later, and he sailed through their system. Class A Bradenton, Double A Altoona, Triple A Indianapolis in barely more than a year, and now finds himself in the big leagues and pitching in Game 2 of the division series. He never faced the Cardinals this year, so this is their first look at him. 10-7 in 19 starts with an ERA of 3.22. In right field, Bird for the first out.
One of the rewards for having all those losing seasons is you get #1 draft picks. And in 2011, Garrett was the #1 overall pick in the draft.
Both these managers, no reluctance to rely on young pitchers. Clint Hurdle pointed out that in 2007, when he guided the Rockies all the way to the World Series, had that late surge, got the wild card, got into the series eventually against the Red Sox. He had 2 rookie starters by the end of the year, Franklin Morales and Ubaldo Jimenez, plus a rookie closer in Manny Corpus. So he doesn't think twice about handing the ball to Cole, especially when a guy can approach 100 miles an hour with his fastball and has the sharp breaking slider that he has and a curveball to go along with it. And on 3 pitches, he puts Lynn away.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. That didn't take long. You saw the quick graphic of #1 picks, and I thought, there's the breaking ball. And Lynn waves at it. I thought Chris Benson, coming out of Clemson, you see him second on the list, was going to be an outstanding pitcher for years to come. Unfortunately, he went the way of so many young, hard-throwing pitchers today. Arm injury, surgery, never developed. Jeff King was a solid player for him.
Matt Carpenter worked with Jose Oquendo, a good second baseman and shortstop in his day, and longtime third base coach of the Cardinals, in the offseason and through spring training to try to get a handle on playing second base. Carpenter's very versatile. He's played both corner infield positions, both corner outfield positions for the Cardinals. Didn't have that much experience at second. Took to it quickly and played at a near MVP level. Wow. Woo. Cole finding a groove. 3 pitches to dispatch Lynn. Same story with Carpenter. His first 2 strikeouts of the day and a 3-0 lead after 3. shows and the only morning show dedicated exclusively to baseball. All the off-season news and plenty of opinion on MLB Network beginning Monday, November 4th. Garrett Cole, RBI single up the middle his first time up after they had walked Jordy Mercer to get to him. And Lynn puts him away, 1-2-3. Between innings, we spoke with Mike Matheny, started by asking him about his decision to start Michael Wacha in Game 4 in Pittsburgh, if there is a Game 4.
More than anything is Michael had a pretty impressive outing last time out and really showed a lot of confidence, a lot of poise in a big situation. So we're excited to get him back out there.
First look at Garrett Cole for your hitters, and he's been more than impressive.
Yeah, he hasn't made a lot of mistakes. He's been on the sides, and they got good velocity, good movement, and using his breaking ball effectively. That's just good pitching.
With Shelby Miller not in the rotation apparently for this series, you can use him as a long man. He's up and throwing, and in a playoff situation, you're not going to wait too long, right?
No, we're anxious to see him do his thing too if somebody doesn't look right. And Lance is showing some good things, but you can't let things go too far in these sort of playoff opportunities.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, guys.
When we recorded that interview a few moments ago, Shelby Miller was still throwing in the Cardinal bullpen. He has since taken a seat, but could quickly get warm again. Lynn has 5 strikeouts. He's allowed 5 hits. He's also hit a man. That was Marte, who's at the plate now, and issued a couple of walks, one of them intentional. Big cut and a miss. Booming home run to dead center field by Pedro Alvarez in the 3rd inning. A 2-run shot, the big blow of the game so far.
Steady diet of breaking balls from Lance Lynn to Starling Marte.
Squib toward first. Adams will take it himself. Now here's Neil Walker. Pittsburgh kid, remembers as an 8-year-old attending the '94 All-Star game at the old Three Rivers Stadium, where he got Ken Griffey Jr.'s autograph. Sid Bream, who scored from second, former Pirate, scored from second as a member of the Braves to break an entire city's heart with that bottom of the 9th rally in Game 7 of the NLCS in '92. Sid still lives in Pittsburgh. He's a presence around the ballpark. And when Walker met him, he said, "Thanks for ruining my childhood." And I only think he was half kidding.
Yeah. Well, Neil, like Jason Grilli, the Pirates closer, sons of big league players. In fact, Steve Grilli and Tom Walker, Neil's dad, played together for the Tigers in the mid-'70s.
Well, there's an even deeper connection for Neil Walker to Pittsburgh. Tom Walker, his dad, never pitched for the Pirates, but he did play winter ball in Puerto Rico with Roberto Clemente. And he helped Roberto Clemente load supplies on that mission of mercy onto the plane bound for Nicaragua on New Year's Eve, '72 into '73. And Tom Walker volunteered to go with Clemente, and Roberto said, "No, you're single. Enjoy yourself. It's New Year's Eve. Stay here." The plane went down. Roberto Clemente perished. And you'd have to spend time around Pittsburgh. Everyone knows he's a Hall of Famer and a tremendously stylish player. The 3-0 pitch is taken for a strike. But to appreciate the extent to which he is truly revered in Pittsburgh, you'd have to spend some time there.
Yeah, whenever you hear baseball players' names in I know they had Stargell, a lot of great ones, but it's Roberto.
There's a shot, and Adams short hops it and goes to the bag himself. Wow.
Wow, he's filling in nicely for Alan Craig, not only with the home runs, but he's played some great defense.
Looking for a better way to get up out of bed instead of getting on the internet and checking a new hit me get. First shot, come strut walking, a little bit of humble, a little bit of
St. Louis, an unseasonably warm October day. Temperatures creeping into the mid-80s as Carlos Beltran leads it off in the bottom of the fourth against Garrett Cole. Beltran doubled his first time up.
Yeah, I think big inning for Garrett Cole because now the second time these experienced hitters have seen him. See if they've made any adjustments.
Showed bunt twice, pushes this one toward third, but it's foul. After the double his first time up, here are Beltran's crazy numbers in October. His playoff average, playoff and World Series average, 362, 792 slugging percentage, and 15 home runs. The slugging percentage is the highest of any player in postseason history.
See how they sweep him way around to the right, which is why he tried to drop that bunt down third baseline. Shortstop almost behind second base. Not quite as exaggerated shifts as they do against a lot of power left-hand hitters.
At first base, Morneau knocks it down. Cole covers, and that retires Beltran. We were talking about Neil Walker and his truly deep connection to the town in which he plays, growing up in Pittsburgh, Pirate fan, and his dad, Tom Walker, being part of the Roberto Clemente story, which was documented so well on the pregame show. Very nice piece that we had on MLB Network, in which Tom Walker expressed his great regard for Roberto Clemente, and obviously his life turned on a decision which actually Roberto Clemente made for him. Stay here. No, don't get on the plane. You stay here and enjoy yourself. I'll go by myself.
And now Neil retired and gets a chance to come out and watch his son play about 70, 75 games a year in Pittsburgh.
Holiday flied to left in his only at bat. Hit an even 300 for the season, but 348 in the season's second half.
Well, Garrett Cole so far is certainly not pitching like a rookie. I mean, Matt Harvey, deservedly so, got an awful lot of hype for a young, hard-throwing rookie pitcher, and unfortunately suffered the arm injury, but this guy's right there with him. I mean, in this atmosphere, he's looking awfully comfortable out there. These rookie pitchers, remember back when Tim Wakefield became a knuckleballer, John Candelaria, one of the toughest left-handers you could face, and then you go back to the first part of the century.
2-2. Matt Adams, the cleanup man, will be next. Off day tomorrow. They resume on Sunday in Pittsburgh. Young right-hander Joe Kelly for the Cardinals. Veteran left-hander Francisco Liriano, who has been lights out of late, including winning the wild card game, will go for the Pirates. What was it Derek Lilliquist, the pitching coach, said about Joe Kelly? As Holliday is called out on strikes. He started toward first, thought he had the walk, but Wally Bell wasn't buying it.
Well, let's see what Matt Holliday thought. No, there's nothing wrong with that pitch. Now, Holliday might have thought it was low when you see where the catcher caught it. Mike Matheny didn't either, but I think when it went across the knees, and here we'll get a look at it, no, I think they're right. It went below the knees. Pittsburgh got a little break on that one. Normally you see it come across that front knee, but that was too low.
A strike to Adams. They shift on him.
Yeah, more so than they did against Beltran. Wow, he is just dealing. And the old saying with pitchers, the more strikes you throw, the more you get. And that's why Cole got the benefit of that call. I mean, he is just strike one, strike two, and anything close, that umpire's right arm's going up.
1-2. Just to finish up about Joe Kelly, Derek Lilliquist said about him when they couldn't find a spot on the rotation, couldn't quite figure out a role for him in the bullpen. He's like a Ferrari idling in the garage. He's set to go. We just got to cut him loose. Hit the accelerator, which they eventually did. A bouncer. Walker gets Adams. So now Cole, since a one-out double in the first by Beltran, has retired 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hitters in a row. Make it 11. Something like that. Close enough. He's doing well. Card, proud supporter of Stand Up to Cancer, and by Budweiser, the official beer of Major League Baseball. Great times awaiting. Grab some buds. Heart of the order for the Pirates in the top of the fifth. McCutchen, Morneau, and Bird. Andrew has singled and flied out. Pretty darn good shot at the MVP award. Molina and Matt Carpenter might split the Cardinal vote. Paul Goldschmidt will get a lot of support for the D-backs, but they didn't make the postseason. So McCutchen might be the guy.
Many touting Freddie Freeman.
Terrific year for the Braves.
I think Andrew McCutchen, with how he's established himself as a quality player and person in Pittsburgh. You hear athletes know him by their first name: Magic, Michael, Reggie. Andrew or Kutch will fit that category in Pittsburgh.
Unless a trend begins and people start referring to him as Lawrence.
Yeah.
Tried to get that started a few innings ago, inadvertently.
Well, he got 2 hits yesterday off Adam Wainwright, and one of the things where you look beyond the numbers of a player, how does he hit good pitching? And he has proven that he already has a hit today, and in playoff atmosphere he can hit top line pitching.
Still 1-2.
For a little guy, I say little, he's like 5'10", but I was talking to Clint Hurdle about his hitting approach. He doesn't lash at the ball with his hands, but if almost like a golfer, he fires that right shoulder through the hitting area more so than most.
Didn't check. He's gone.
When he's right, Lance Lynn, and by right I mean getting to 2 strikes. That's 6 times he's gotten Pirate hitters to strike out on his breaking ball. And you can see McCutchen didn't come close to that one. They'll chase more bad pitches than the Cardinal lineup will, so the key is get to 2 strikes and take advantage of that curve.
All 6 strikeouts for Lynn on the breaking ball. Morneau swings on the first one, wallops it toward left center field. Jay going back, looking up, it's off the wall. Morneau on his way for 2 and in there with a 1-out double.
Pitch right in the middle of the plate, and Morneau drives it to left center field. And just your routine stand-up double.
Single and a double and 3 trips for Morneau. 6 hits for the Pirates off Lynn. And here's Bird. Shelby Miller back up and throwing in the Cardinal bullpen. Bird skies one to right center. Jay going back, way back, and this one will bounce over the wall and bring home a run. Started out like a lazy fly ball. Winds up bouncing on the warning track and up into the seats. A double for Bird and a 4-0 Pittsburgh lead.
Well, you mentioned the hot weather here in St. Louis, unusually hot day game, and the ball is carrying. That was a hanging breaking ball, a kind of a flat slider. And just Jay drifting with no chance he can catch up with it. He just kept drifting and drifting away from him. And Morneau checking, waiting. And now he sees there's no chance to catch that one, and he'll score easily. And that's the magic run, 4. And Lynn's reaction. See, they were playing Bird a little bit over to left center, so Jay had no chance to get that one. But every team in the playoffs so far, and that's the magic number even during the season, when they score 4 runs or more, they win. Look at Lance Lynn's start with 23 hitters, plenty of first pitch strikes. When he did get ahead, he was able to strike him out on the curveball. But just a few slip ups in the field by the Cardinals and a couple of hittable pitches add up to a 4-0 lead.
Seth Maness now joins Shelby Miller in the Cardinal bullpen. Alvarez has a double and a homer in 2 trips. He has homered in both games of this series after tying Paul Goldschmidt of the D-backs for the league lead with 36 during the regular season. Nowhere near the 53 Chris Davis hit for Baltimore to lead the majors.
Looks like they're going to pitch around Alvarez. I'm surprised they just don't go ahead and walk him. Russell Martin, a good clutch hitter, but I think they'd take their chances on righty against righty.
And the possibility of a double play.
Yeah, that's way outside.
Oh, they're just about walking him intentionally.
They're hoping he'll bite at one of those.
And now they'll probably just throw the 4th one high and wide intentionally, although Molina gets down in his crouch.
Well, if he doesn't, Alvarez will be hitting.
Sets up outside. That's ball 4. Seth Maness, who just got up and began to throw, is a double play machine. 16 double play groundouts induced by Maness this year, the most among National League relievers. And Matheny goes to the bullpen, and let's see if it is Maness. Miller has also been throwing.
Yeah, Derek Lilliquist's expression was, he's the guy we bring in when we want it on the floor.
Exit Lynn, enter Maness. A 4-0 Pirate lead and threatening for more. Strike. Lance Lynn was great in September. His October starts poorly. Maness made 66 appearances after his May debut, the most in the National League in that span. He's 24 years old, 6 feet tall, 190, from Southern Pines, North Carolina. His 1-1 to Martin is up and in.
You see that pitching motion, and one of the ways a pitcher can find the right arm slot is to field ground balls. And Maness was a former shortstop. Watch how quickly he gets the ball out of the glove up in the throwing position. That's how he can get on top of it and get sinking action.
And he has one of the highest ground ball rates in all the major leagues for the season. And as I mentioned, 16 double plays induced, the
See
top
that
figure in the league.
Yeah, see that arm just comes right up above his head. Very easy to get on top of the ball and get it to sink from that arm angle.
Toward the hole and through, as Descalso can't flag it down. It'll be an RBI hit for Martin. Bird hustles home, and it's 5-0 Pirates.
And that run charged to Lynn. And of course, if you're a ground ball pitcher, once it leaves the bat, obviously you can't control it. Your job is to get him to hit it on the ground. Fortunately for the Pirates, that one was right in the hole where neither Freese nor Descalso could get to it. Any place but there. And just out of the reach of Descalso, and the Pirates get their 5th run.
Mercer, backhanded by Descalso. There's one. But Carpenter juggles it and can't turn it. They had time, but he couldn't find the handle.
Nice play by Descalso, and then you'll get a look at what Bob is talking about with Matt Carpenter. You see the throw. Nice quick pivot, accurate throw, and couldn't quite get a grip on it right there. And that allowed Mercer to be safe and Cole to come up with 2 on, 2 out.
RBI single and a strikeout. In any case, even if the Cardinals should rally and the Pirates come home down 0-2, but if this holds up and they come back with the series even at 1, the atmosphere will be something to savor in Pittsburgh. The baseball atmosphere in St. Louis, always top of the chart, but it's been a long time for the Pirates and their fans.
And what Cole and the Pirates have done a good job of today, coming off that 9-1 win yesterday, is they've never really given this crowd much to get excited about. So they've been able to keep them quiet. That won't be the case in Pittsburgh. They start from the time the gates open.
Cardinals have been to the playoffs 11 times since the Pirates last made it in '92. They've been to the World Series 6 times since the Pirates were last there and won it in 1979. "20 consecutive losing seasons between the heartbreak of '92 against the Braves to this year." The 1-2. And Cole fights it off. What's the atmosphere like? Not just at PNC Park, which is one of the most beautiful ballparks in the major leagues, but Clint Hurdle, not bragging, just shaking his head in amazement, tells this story. He walked into a Starbucks this summer and got a standing ovation from all the patrons, and I assume the baristas as well. I asked him, what was your order? He said, same as always. Quad Vente, non-fat, no-whip, 2-pump mocha. Line drive at Adams. And the Pirates will settle for 2. But that ups their lead to 5-0. After he told me his Starbucks order, Hurdle said, I'm discovering my sensitive side. Postseason drama all in one place. MLB Network, presented by Bacardi Oakard. Greg Amsinger, Harold Reynolds, and Billy Ripken are standing by. Yadier Molina to the plate to start it for the Cardinals. Down by 5. To this point, Garrett Cole, who has not thrown a complete game in this his rookie season, he's 10-7 in 19 starts, has expended just 51 pitches and no more than 14 in any inning. The Pirate philosophy is to pitch to contact. Even guys who have overwhelming stuff, pitch to contact. They preach a mantra of 3 pitches or less and rely on the defense.
Good for them.
Molina whacks one to center. Back goes McCutchen to the track, to the wall. It's gone. Well, when they say pitch to contact, it wasn't that kind of contact they had in mind.
Yeah, if you get it in the wrong spot, look at Russell Martin's glove low and away, and this one pretty much over the middle of the plate, and the ball is carrying well out to right center. And now Cole, with the crowd getting into it a little, has to slow it down. There's another look at the pitch, because he's next to his motion a little quicker, and he falls behind 2-0.
That one's in for a strike. 2-1 to John Jay.
And a nice play out in right center field.
Played it off his chest and snagged the souvenir. Cole's shutout is gone, but he still has a 4-run cushion.
See, that's a good take right there. A lot of teams start wailing away, and he struggled a little bit with his control. So take a pitch, make him run the count full, trying to get on base. Good job by John Jay.
Swing and a miss, strike 3. The 4th strikeout for Cole. Well, that wasn't 3 pitches or less. He struck him out on the 3-2 pitch.
Well, it was a good comeback. You know, that's pretty typical for a rookie pitcher. You give up a home run, you haven't experienced the home crowd, and then your motion gets just a tick faster. Maybe lose sight of the catcher's glove, falls behind 2-0, but he made a nice comeback.
Freese was out on a comebacker in the 2nd. Oh, 0-2. Daniel Descalso on deck. He reaches for it, rolls it to Alvarez. One third baseman throws out another. Pitcher spot due next. Adron Chambers has moved into the on-deck circle. If this drops, which it will not, Marte makes the catch. Chambers might have batted in this inning. After the home run by Molina, Cole records 3 straight outs, and it's 5-1 after 5. is handed down there, and of course the arch in the background. You can visit the official online shop of Major League Baseball at MLB.com/shop for the largest selection of authentic postseason caps, t-shirts, jerseys, sweatshirts, and more. Get your gear straight from the source, MLB.com/shop. The former Brewer John Axford comes out of the bullpen. They don't double switch, so this will be his only inning, and they'll pinch hit in the bottom of the 6th.
Yeah, plenty of relief pitchers on the roster, and Axford, the guy who's had experience as a closer for the Brewers, his job just to get through one inning.
In fact, he led the National League in saves 2 years ago with 46 while wearing a Milwaukee uniform. He faces Starling Marte, who's 2 for 2 against him. Small sample. One of those 2 hits, a homer. Marte's 0 for 2, and he's been hit by a pitch. And that's out of play. The third hitter in the inning, Andrew McCutchen, is 4 for 10 in his career against Axford, and half of those 4 hits are home runs. Mike Matheny is aware of all this, but entrusts the inning to Axford nonetheless. Mike Matheny, at age 43, no managerial experience until he took the job last year, inheriting a team that had won the World Series and came within 1 game of getting them back there. They had a 3-1 lead over the Giants in the NLCS before San Francisco roared back to win the next 3 and then sweep the Tigers in the World Series.
One of the treats of being around the game for a long time, which I have been, is to see the development of guys like Clint Hurdle, who you'd never have dreamed of would be a manager, coming out as a cover boy. And here's Mike Matheny. My first memories of Mike were as a catcher with the University of Michigan when he was learning his trade under the great Bill Freehand, former Tiger catcher.
Caught for the Brewers, the Blue Jays, long stretch with the Cardinals, finished up with the Giants. 4-time Gold Glover as Marte draws a walk. So he's been on twice today without a hit by a pitch and a walk. Speaking of Matheny, won 4 Gold Gloves and had to retire while still in his mid-30s because of multiple concussions.
Well, this could test Yadier Molina. You see Neil Walker taking a long look down at Nick Leyva. You know, left-hand hitter. I mean, Molina can do it anyway, but it's a little more difficult to catch and throw with a left-hand hitter in the box. And Marte, certainly a threat to steal.
Nick Leyva, who coached here for Whitey Herzog in the 80s and managed briefly in the major leagues, is the third base coach for Clint Hurdle. Rick Sofield, their coach at first. Marte chased back. He stole 41. He was caught 15 times. That's the most in the majors in that latter category.
And of course, nowadays teams have the stopwatch on all the pitchers' delivery time. Not only Molina important, but how quickly does the pitcher get the ball to the catcher?
You're talking about Mike Matheny, a fine catcher in his own right, and all the concussions he suffered. There's split opinion about this, but Matheny is among those who believes there should be a rule change and that catchers should have to give base runners charging toward the plate a piece of the plate, and that the runner is obliged to take it to try to minimize those often devastating collisions.
Got Axford's attention on Marte, and first pitch high. Yeah, and Mike said, I never thought I would say that, but I think that's the opinion of a lot of the old former hard-nosed block-the-plate catchers. Too many injuries, concussions, after effects.
Safety question first and foremost, but also a lot of contract dollars tied up in frontline catchers. Can't afford to lose them. Walker lofts one to center. Carpenter goes out from second. Jay comes in, but it's going to be Beltran in right center field who squeezes it.
McCutchen already looking at Leyva. You know, one of the options here with Molina's good throwing arm, one out, is possibility of a hit and run. Actually, it's should be called run and hit, because most of the time the runner runs and the hitter hits. And of course, the Pirates had one of the great ones back in their championship year in '60. Dick Groat also played here in St. Louis.
Cardinal World Series winners in '64 after winning the MVP and being on a World Series champion in 1960 when the Pirates beat the Yankees on the Mazeroski home run in Game 7. Axford's 0-1 pitch to McCutchen, but first he'll send Marte diving back. Nick Leyva on the lines at third. Marte edging away from first with Adams holding him on. Axford works to the plate. Marte is going. The throw from Molina is not in time.
Yeah, I don't care if you're Johnny Bench, Javier Molina, whoever you are. You're not with that pitch up there. See, Axford's attention was on the runner. Pitch to the plate in a bad location. Absolutely no chance to get Marte. Most stolen bases are stolen on the pitcher, not the catcher. Look at that jump he got.
But nonetheless, this part is undeniable. Over the last 8 or 9 seasons, the Cardinals have had more than 200 fewer bases stolen against them than any other team in the majors. And Molina's been their catcher over that period of time. A lot of coming and goings among the pitching staff, but Molina's the steadying influence.
No question. A lot of teams don't try it, but the Pirates are going to do that.
McCutchen waits on that one and rifles it down the left field line, but he didn't wait long enough. Just a little bit out in front of it.
Another breaking ball that hung up and in, and Bob said McCutchen got the barrel of the bat out just a little too quick to keep it fair.
Veteran left-hander Randy Choate up in the Cardinal bullpen. Two and two to McCutchen. Left-handed hitting Justin Morneau on deck. So Choate is getting ready just in case. Full count. McCutchen is singled, flied out, struck out. Morneau, who's 2 for 3 with a single and a double, will be next.
Oh, he could afford to try to make McCutchen chase something here, because you got a lefty on deck and they'll bring Choate in.
He walks him. So a walk, a stolen base, then another walk with a fly out from Walker mixed in. 2 on, 1 out, and Morneau to the plate. So far, Matheny not to the mound.
Clem Hurdle has Gabby Sanchez on the bench. Right-hand hitting first baseman, but doubt he'd make a move right now. Not Matheny, but Hurdle. He wouldn't make a move with the lead, and Morneau being a good fielding first baseman. Now he's ready.
And Matheny signals for Choate. 37-year-old situational specialist. Generally comes on just to face a left-handed hitter or two. So that's our T-Mobile pitching change. Choate in for Axford to face Morneau, who has faced Choate 3 times without a hit in his career. Strike 1.
Mike Matheny gambling on another out because no right-hander loosening in the Cardinal bullpen with right-handed Marlon Byrd on deck.
Byrd slotted in between the two lefties, Morneau and Alvarez, in Clint Hurdle's lineup. Could be a DP. There's 1. There's 2. So Choate, economical and effective. And the Cardinals are out of the 6th.
Built it, and now we have come. It's the Pittsburgh Pirates against the St. Louis Cardinals. It isn't heaven, but it's pretty darn close.
Nice to have Ray Liotta lending his voice to our postseason coverage. As most of you know, he played Shoeless Joe Jackson in the film Field of Dreams. It's been a dream game, too, so far for Garrett Cole. He's allowed only the home run to Molina.
You see the batter's face. First pitch strikes. A lot of power fastballs. Just a couple base runners, and he's changed speeds nicely.
Adron Chambers off the bench to pinch hit for Choate, leading off in the 6th.
That was ball 1, but the impressive number in the profile there of Garrett Cole's afternoon was first pitch strikes. 11 out of 17, and out of those 11, this one, as Chambers bluffed Button, took ball 1. Of the 11 first pitch strikes, he got 10 of those hitters out, which is how those percentages usually work.
Carpenter at the top of the order awaits his chance. Chambers launches one to dead center field. McCutchen goes back to the track and nearly at the wall, leaning up against the padding. He puts it away.
Boy, that ball is jumping today.
It sure is.
When you see an outfielder drift instead of run right to the point, that tells you it's getting. And McCutchen, good fundamental outfield play. Took a glance at the wall. He could feel the warning track, knew right where he was. Didn't have to make it look like a sensational catch. Made it look rather routine.
So Chambers denied in his bid for his first career home run. Carpenter is grounded out, struck out. When you look at him and how lean he is, hard to believe that when he was at TCU, he got up to 240 pounds on a burger, pizza, and beer diet.
Matt Carpenter?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. Before leaning out.
Yeah. Went on Lance Lynn's diet.
Yeah, that's fine for a frat boy, but not for an aspiring big leaguer.
Oof.
Still listed at 215, but looks a lot leaner than that. Mentioned how this has been a dream postseason debut to this point for Garrett Cole. Sam Ryan's going to tell us just how big a dream it was and where it started in just a moment. 3-1 to Carpenter with Beltran on deck. That'll make the seats full count. The Cardinals have managed just 2 hits against Cole. A first inning double by Beltran and a leadoff homer in the 5th from Molina.
And this is what managers, I think, Mike Matheny and Clint Hurdle would call the bridge inning. Everybody goes to their bullpen. Pirates have a great one. And this is the inning that bridges the starter to the bullpen.
And he walks Carpenter. Let's check in with Sam Ryan.
Yeah, Bobby, you're talking about Garrett Cole. This is his first postseason appearance in his young career, but he was actually at the playoffs as an 11-year-old at the World Series in 2001 between the Arizona Diamondbacks and the New York Yankees. He told me he went to Games 6 and 7 as a young Yankees fan, and in that moment sat there and thought, wow, it'd be neat to pitch in the majors and to pitch in the postseason, and he called this a storybook season for himself, guys.
It certainly has been that. His rookie year is the first time in 2 decades that the Pirates make the postseason. He goes 10-7. He's on the verge of winning his first postseason start. Even though his family is from Newport Beach, they were Yankee fans. And the Yankees took him, as I mentioned earlier, in the 08 draft, but he decided to go to UCLA and further develop. And then the Pirates snared him 3 years later.
Good pitch, off-speed pitch. Amazing how the rhythm of the game goes. You know, it looked all Pittsburgh. Randy Choate comes in, does a little damage control, then suddenly a base on balls, and you got this crowd into it. They see some hope. Pirates could have blown it open last inning.
Cole gets ahead of Beltran 1-2.
Justin Wilson, hard-throwing left-hander, as Clint Hurdle, his pitching coach Ray Searage, since maybe Cole losing just a little bit of command, but got Beltran. That's unusual for a hitter like Beltran to chase. But again, bear in mind, they have never seen Garrett Cole before today.
Two and two. That fastball hit 100.
Wow.
Sharp breaking slider to go with it, and an ever-improving curveball, too.
I don't know what that one hit miles per hour, but Beltran was close to squaring it up.
Alvarez off the line at third. Mercer nearly behind the second base bag. 1 out, 1 on the 2-2 pitch. Runs the count out full.
These are those at-bats that Mike Matheny has talked about with the Cardinal hitters. They take a lot of pride in these 2-strike at-bats.
Cardinal crowd had been quiet. They're up and roaring now. It doesn't take much to get them going here. And Beltran hangs in. The right-hander Brian Morris has joined the lefty Justin Wilson in the Pirate bullpen. Matt Holliday on deck. And a called strike 3. A civil disagreement from Carlos Beltran, who has a brief word with Wally Bell, who punched him out.
Well, that had to be a front door tailing fastball, and it was. Had just enough movement. You see Beltran, you watch his belt buckle, he gives ground, but it moves back across the inside corner. That's the two-seam fastball. And Cole's reaction, good pitch.
5th strikeout for him. And now it's up to Holliday to keep it going. Strike 1. Well, the called 3rd strike to Beltran quieted this crowd.
Wow, that was huge.
Matt Adams on deck if Holliday can keep it going here in the 6th.
There it is. Hit it if you can. Getting it up there in the upper 90s. Probably senses this could be his last inning.
This will be his 82nd pitch. So not all that many. And again, it's clocked at 100. This is, wow. I'm not making the comparison yet. Don't want to jump to conclusions, but it's one thing for a reliever to come out and throw this way for an inning or two. It's the Justin Verlanders of the world who, as the game goes along and they move up toward 100 pitches, can still get up near 100 miles an hour. And Cole is showing that ability today. Kevin Segrist, left-hander in the Cardinal bullpen, who has been remarkable this season. Holliday lays off. So the count goes full, and Carpenter will take off from first.
Well, he's thrown a lot of quality pitches already, Garrett Cole, but this would be his biggest and probably his last either way.
Popped down the right field line in foul ground and in the seats.
And if people wonder why would you think it's his last, left-hander in the bullpen, Matt Adams on deck. And this is by far the most stressful inning that Garrett Cole has had. You see his 85 pitches, a lot of strikes, but the Cardinals have worked him in some deep counts this inning.
85 pitches, but 22 of them in this Cardinal 6th. Three and two to Holliday, who's flied to left and struck out. Bouncer to short. Mercer. Big hop. And that's that. Cole walks off, still in front, 5-1. As we head for the 7th. Have 10 rookies on their division series roster, 40% of the roster. Kevin Segrist is one of them. And none of this is a misprint.
No.
The 0.45 ERA is the lowest in big league history among pitchers with at least 45 appearances. Marlon Byrd swings on the first one, a mile-high pop-up. When it comes down, who's going to take it? Freeze having trouble with it, and it drops. It drops. And Byrd, who hustled, winds up at second.
You could almost see that coming. David did not look comfortable on that. I mentioned the ball is carrying, and once you have to start backpedaling, you could come in and catch one. But again, the second, actually third miscue the Cardinals have made. John Jay misjudged one earlier. Yadier Molina missed one, and Descalzo's thinking about it. Freeze calls him off, and a break for the Pirates.
That's the first charged error of the game for either side. Byrd at second base with nobody out. Segrist did not allow a single run in 24 appearances this year at Busch Stadium. Finished the year with a 25-inning scoreless streak.
Yeah, to me, the most important stat for relief pitchers is power versus control, that ratio. And the best in the ballpark today is Jason Grilli, then Trevor Rosenthal. But Segrist is right there. He has struck out 14 more than base runners allowed. It's a good display of power and control.
Alvarez a double, a homer, and a walk. Here's Carpenter from the edge of the outfield grass. But moving to third with one out is Byrd.
Yeah, productive out. He'll get some high fives and congratulations on that routine ground out, getting another runner into on third with less than 2 out.
Well, here's Russell Martin with another right-handed hitter, Jordy Mercer, on deck. Segras was able to retire Alvarez. Left-handers hit 118 in 79 plate appearances against them this year with only 1 extra base hit. The Cardinal infield comes in as they have to in this situation, trying to choke off what would be the 6th run. Martin has struck out, walked, and had an RBI single. Two and 0.
Well, with Martin being a clutch hitter, Mercer in the on-deck circle. They've got a parking place for him if they choose not to give him something to hit.
Three and 0. Derek Lilliquist, the Cardinal pitching coach, who succeeded the great Dave Duncan in that role. He cuts on the 3-0 pitch and comes up empty.
Nothing to lose. If Russell got one he thought he could lift. You see Molina's target actually got more of the plate than he wanted.
Right field, Beltran toward the line. Tagging is Bird. The ball is in fair territory. Bird heads for the plate, and he scores easily with the 6th run. Let's check with Paul Severino back at the studio. Paul? All right, Paul, thanks. You know, with the Rays in the postseason, the A's in the postseason, the Pirates, the Indians, great to see some of the lower revenue teams in the postseason field.
And every team that's in the postseason has a couple of pitchers at the top of their rotation that are certainly capable of taking them to the World Championship. We saw Kershaw last night. Medlin did not have his best night, but he's capable. Lester, and boy, this run right here back to the Pirates. Managers, they like to get that 5th run late in the game. Eliminate the grand slam tying it. That's an important one, and that was great fundamental baseball. Alvarez hits a ground out to advance the runner, and Martin with a sacrifice fly.
The 2-0 to Mercer. Pitcher's spot is next if the inning is kept alive, and Gabby Sanchez is on deck to pinch hit. Meanwhile, Tony Watson warms up in the Pirate bullpen. Three and 2 to Mercer, who was walked intentionally in the 2nd, and then the pitcher Cole made the Cardinals pay with a sharp single up the middle that produced Pittsburgh's 1st run. After that, Mercer is grounded out twice. Shelby Miller again. Foul ball. An unearned run in this 7th inning for the Pirates. A drop pop-up off the bat of Marlon Byrd, which found him at second base after the misplay by Freese. And then later a sacrifice fly from Russell Martin after an advancing ground out from Alvarez. A sharply hit ball that Freese knocks down, has time to recover across the diamond. No! Adams scooped it, but Mercer beat it.
And Matheny out to argue. Hot corner, almost got under his glove, but he knocks it down. Still have time to get it and throw him out, but a little bit of an off-balance throw. Matt Adams on the receiving end. He's done a good job picking up low throws. Short argument from Matheny, obviously no avail. There's the scoop by Matt Adams.
And he might have had him.
Yeah, sure looked like he did. Yeah, Adams had the, unless his foot was off the bag, but certainly if his foot was on the bag, he was out. We get a couple looks at it.
Still waiting for the scoring on it as to whether it was a hit or an error. And it is ruled a hit. So Freese avoids his second error of the inning. And Gabby Sanchez is the pinch hitter. So Garrett Cole's day is done. After 6 very strong innings, allowed the Cardinals only 2 hits. From that angle, again, no different conclusion than from the first angle. Looks like they nipped him at first, but didn't get the call. The 0-2 coming to Sanchez. And a pop-up behind the bag at first. Carpenter in behind Adams to put an end to it. But the Pirates tack on an unearned run. And as they stretch in St. Louis, the Cardinals have a 5-run hill to climb. Scott and Sam Ryan. Bob Costas at Busch Stadium, where the fans are settling back into their seats after the 7th inning stretch. And if the Cardinals are going to get off the mat, Matt Adams will have to start it for them here in the 7th. Clint Barmas is in at shortstop for Mercer. Tony Watson takes over the pitching duties for Cole.
See Watson's numbers, sparkling ERA, opponents at 198. He's a lefty that's not just a lefty-lefty specialist. Hurdle will look for him to work through this entire inning.
He had 8 regular season appearances against the Cardinals, and they didn't score on him. He threw 10 shutout innings all told against St. Louis. Adams, Molina, and Jay for the Cards. As we look ahead to Game 3 on Sunday in Pittsburgh, we mentioned that Francisco Liriano is 3-0 against the Cardinals, but Joe Kelly, who will start for St. Louis, is 3-0 with an ERA of 1 against Pittsburgh, and 2 of those victories came at PNC Park. The Cardinals won only 3 times in 10 games there, and 2 of the 3 were victories for Kelly. Smacked up the middle for a leadoff hit from Adams.
Well, a little hope for the Cardinals here in the 7th, but until the 7th, they were really shut down by young Garrett Cole. Let's take a look at his day. He's got the 2-seam fastball boring in on Matt Holliday. He's used a changeup, another change. Got a 4-seamer riding high in the strike zone. Another change. He is going to mix a curveball in there sooner or later, but he put on quite a display, topping 100 miles an hour with his fastball, holding the Cardinals to 1 run and 2 hits.
Here's Molina, who homered to straightaway center his last time up. The Pirate bullpen, which has been so effective all season long, has been nicknamed the Shark Tank. And when asked to explain why, this guy Tony Watson said, well, when the bullpen gate opens, you smell blood, just like a shark.
Oh.
And then he added, but I'm really not much of an oceanographer.
Well, he's a good pitcher.
You don't have to be Jacques Cousteau to realize that the Pirate bullpen has been better than just reliable all season long. They've been outstanding. In the air, down the right field line, coming over his bird, but he runs out of room. Clint Hurdle's Pirates had fast starts and sputtering finishes in both 2010 and 2011. I should say 2011 and 2012. And then this year, sustained it throughout the season. 1-2.
Bullpen's done a great job for Garrett Cole, better than any starter in the league, taking over his leads, helped him get that 10-7 record in 19 starts.
Watson's 1-2 to Molina. It's taken outside. I want to check with Jerry Lane. Nothing doing. Jerry Lane is the crew chief, although all these umpires are experienced. With the rotation, Lane will work home plate on Sunday. Joe Torre, who oversees the umpires, recently told me we like to have a crew chief in a best-of-5 work the plate in Game 3 because it's either a deciding game or a pivotal game in the series. Molina drives one to right. Bird, not quite to the track, makes the catch. In a best-of-7 series, obviously, the crew chief will work the plate Game 1 and Game 7 again if there is a Game 7. But in a best-of-5 with a 6-man crew, the best you can hope for is just one game for 5 of the 6. And Torrey thinks that game 3 is the best one to have your number 1 guy behind the plate.
And Joe, as a manager, he used to alter his pitching rotation. He would have like Mike Messina slot in game 3 because of that very reason, particularly on the road.
Jay at the plate, Freeze on deck. Oh, and 2. A ball and 2 strikes. No, strike 3. Jay stayed up there and then slowly turned away.
That almost, it's not late enough in the afternoon yet. There's no shadows, but it almost looked like you didn't even see that pitch. That was right down the middle.
Oh, no question about it that it was a strike.
He swung at the first one well out of the strike zone and then took 2 right down Broadway. I think there's a Broadway in St. Louis.
There is. Not as famous as the one in New York, but it exists.
See, Watson with that 3/4 delivery has a lot of late movement. That's why he can pitch against righties as well. That pitch to Freeze probably looked like it was going to be inside, tails back across the plate.
So Watson fans Jay on 3 pitches and then gets ahead of Freeze 0-2. Adams opened the inning with a single. He's remained anchored at first as Molina has flied out and Jay has struck out. 1-2.
See that that arm will be about 3/4, about 10 o'clock on the face of the clock, or I should say 2 o'clock. One pitch away from either getting out of this or getting the crowd into it. They've been up and down a few times, despite probably 175 to 200 pitches thrown in this game. They get a little hope. And he got some hope when Holiday was at the plate and Cole squelched that rally. Now a couple pitches from getting Descalzo up there with a couple men on.
Another 2-2 pitch. And a full count.
Who could forget that at bat that David Freeze had in Game 5 of the Division Series last year when the Cardinals pulled it out
against the Nationals. And a 2-out walk. So Daniel Descalzo will bat with 2 on and 2 out. Pitchers spot next if they sustain the inning. Shane Robinson pops out of the dugout as the potential pinch hitter.
And Ray Searage, Pirate pitching coach, comes out to talk to Watson. Managers can put up with throwing strikes and giving up a hit here or there, but boy, you get to the late innings of a game, you got a comfortable lead. They detest those base on balls that just give the opposition a little hope. I learned that from pitching for Whitey Herzog right here in this town.
You were part of their '82 World Championship team. Took the World Series over the Brewers, who then were in the American League. Descalzo has flied out twice. jammed him, and he rolls it foul.
Justin Wilson, hard throwing left-hander, begins to loosen up.
Brian Morris, who had been throwing earlier, continues to do so.
And like most bullpens in the major leagues, they come out of there with guys throwing in the upper 90s, and those two do that.
Shane Robinson awaiting his chance. A little roller up the first base line. It's a fair ball picked up by Watson, who applies the tag to the tumbling Descalso. So the Cardinals make a little bit of noise in the 7th, but nothing comes of it. They're still down by 5 with 6 outs left. Never appeared in relief until today.
This is the Ferrari in the garage.
No, that's Joe Kelly.
Oh, that's Kelly. That's right.
That's Kelly, yeah, who starts Game 3 against Liriano on Sunday in Pittsburgh.
Boy, it's pretty good to have a guy 15-9. You can't get in the rotation. There's Mark Melanson, who served as a closer when Grilli was out with an injury, and he's been their shutdown guy in the 8th inning.
Marte drives one to deep left center field. This one is on its way, and this one is gone. Marte, who hit a dozen during the regular season, takes Shelby Miller deep and widens the margin to 7-1. A no-doubter from the crack of the bat. Walker's 0 for 4. Another look at the home run swing.
Well, he had trouble with Lance Lynn's curveball, but no trouble with a high fastball. Miller supplies enough power, and if you've watched our game today, when it gets airborne, the ball is carrying rather well, and that got out in a hurry.
Now, you were talking about Mike Matheny's decision concerning his rotation in this division series. Obviously, Wainwright is his ace, so he starts game 1 and was terrific again yesterday. Lance Lynn was kind of on the bubble, but he pitched well enough in September, and he has lots of postseason experience, so he got the call today and didn't have it. Joe Kelly 3-0 with an ERA of 1 against the Pirates and won twice in Pittsburgh, so there's your selection for game 3. Now, when it comes down to game 4, it was either Miller or Wacha. Wacha pitched 8 2/3 no-hit innings against the Nationals in his last outing of the regular season and lost the no-hitter on an infield hit. So for that reason, Miller finds himself in the bullpen, at least in this round of the playoffs, assuming the Cardinals get beyond this round. He might be back in the rotation in a best-of-7 series. Walker skies one into shallow center. Backpedaling from short is Descalso. Coming in is Holiday in front of the center fielder Jay to make the catch.
And is the privilege of being a baseball fan. That's what makes the game great. You know, there's going to be a few Cardinal fans saying, well, why didn't they start Shelby Miller? Guy's 15-9. And he doesn't get a chance to start, particularly after the rough afternoon that Lance Lynn had. But Lynn had a great September, as did his opponent today, Garrett Cole, and he got the start.
McCutchen 1 for 3 with a walk. This is the 21st time these teams have met this year. If this score holds up, the Pirates will have won 11 and the Cardinals 10.
You see in the outfield, respecting the power of Andrew McCutchen, and I like that.
Here's Jay gliding over toward right center to pick it off.
I think you'll see after the first couple innings, outfielders play a little deeper because John Jay got burned early in the game. The ball that carried much farther than he thought it would. Well, if this holds up 7-1, it's, again, we talk about that magic number, scoring 4 runs. In every playoff game so far, the team that scored 4 or more has won the game, and they've held the opposition to less than 4. That's been baseball for the last 50 years.
Morneau 2 for 4, a single and a double today.
Mike Matheny's team was the best in the National League at that, scoring 4 and winning 85% of them.
On 2. Sitting very calmly behind his desk in the visitors' clubhouse before the game, Clint Hurdle said, look, we've been playing on the edge. We had to win 1 game in the wild card knockout round to get here. You know, we're not a perfect team. We were outpitched, out-hit, and outplayed in every way yesterday. We lose 9-1. We take a shower and wash it off. Although he then added, when it's 9-1, maybe you need a power hose, not just a shower. Well, whatever they did, it was the right medicine. They lead this one 7-1 as the Cardinals come up on the bottom of the 8th. The 7th run provided on a leadoff homer into deep left center by Starling Marte here in the 8th. 5% or more on car insurance, and sponsored in part by Jaguar. How alive are you? And by the U.S. Army. There's strong, then there's Army strong. Learn more about the strength behind the uniform at GoArmy.com. Young enough that his enthusiasm is undampened, even with his team down by 6, as they come up with 6 outs left to them. Mark Melanson comes out of the bullpen. When Jason Grilli was down with an injury, Melanson assumed the closer's role and did pretty well. Colton Wong, highly regarded young prospect, off the bench to lead off. And a called strike.
Mark Melanson, another guy with power stuff, more strikeouts and base runners. Outstanding curveball. 12 to 6, 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock.
Wong pops one into shallow center. McCutchen wants it and has it.
You mentioned the Shark Tank, Bob, the nickname the Pirates have for their bullpen. This is where they stack up. Right up there at earned run average. 55 saves is first. Their save percentage is best. They've logged a lot of innings. And batting average against. I like power control better than whip, but that kind of is the same thing as base runners per inning, and Clint Hurdle's taking advantage of them.
And actually, it was the guy on the mound now, Mark Melanson, who dubbed the Pirates bullpen the Shark Tank. He and his wife went diving amidst great white sharks in southern New Zealand during the offseason. He said that was a bucket list item for him.
Wow. I didn't run into him there. I was there myself.
Beautiful
beautiful place. New Zealand. Wonderful. I didn't go in didn't do any deep sea diving for sharks, but
probably just as well.
Yes.
Carpenter is jammed, rolls it to Walker at second, who throws him out.
Yeah, I guess the big news today, Bob, we're wrapped up in our game here, but the Reds opted not to renew the contract of Dusty Baker. That does not come as a shock to me. You know, they were on the verge of being a championship team, and when they don't accomplish that, the first thing to go is the manager.
He was actually fired. He had a year left on his contract.
Oh, he did?
Yep.
Okay.
And they fired him today.
Yeah.
After a disappointing conclusion to the season, they were swept at home by the Pirates, so the Pirates secured home field for the one-game wild card, and then the Reds lost that game in Pittsburgh. Dusty Baker is one of the most engaging guys in all of baseball, and every time they take a poll among Major League players about what manager you'd like to play for, he is at or near the top of that list, and he's had a tremendous amount of success. The mark against him would be that on occasions when he has been close, whether he's at fault or whether it's just happenstance, it's sometimes slipped away. He had the big lead in Game 6 with his Giants against the Angels in the World Series in 2002. The lead slipped away, then they lost Game 7. He had the 3-1 lead with the Cubs on the Marlins the next year, and that slipped away. He had a 2-0 lead in the division series against the Giants with the Reds last year, and they lost 3 straight to lose that series. Poked down to first, Morneau. The Cardinals go quietly in the 8th. And then this year, they were right there for the first wild card, settled for the second, lost the wild card game. And what it all adds up to is a pink slip for Dusty in Cincinnati. He'll be back somewhere, though. 7-1 Pirates after 8. uniform, and the accounts and descriptions of this game may not be disseminated without express written consent. Freeze picks up the hot shot off the bat of Bird and throws him out as Edward Mujica comes on to work the top of the ninth. This guy got 37 saves for the Cardinals. He was their closer until the latter stages of the season, and then he just lost it. And now it's Trevor Rosenthal, when they have a lead, who closes games out. And as Mike Matheny told us before the game, Kitty, I'm looking for spots to give Mujica some work so he can find himself again.
Yeah, and as Mike said, we wouldn't be here, without Mujica's performance. 37 saves and 41 chances, and things just went south for him about halfway through the year. Fortunately, they have a guy like Rosenthal who throws about 100 miles an hour.
Alvarez rips one foul. He has a double, a homer, a walk, and a ground out in this afternoon's game. By the way, we should tell you, since they kicked some cash MLBN's way, that was a T-Mobile pitching change.
Oh, okay.
That brought Mujica out of the bullpen. If the price is right, we'll say it.
That's true.
More than willing to play along. 0-2 to Alvarez. Homered yesterday off Wainwright. Today off Lynn. Back to Mujica. 2 quick outs.
I keep waiting for the Nuprin painful play of the game, but I haven't seen that.
Was that one back in the day?
No, but that's a pain reliever.
Oh, and here we are.
Yeah.
Shirt sleeve weather in October in St. Louis.
Tank top weather.
Temperatures in the mid-80s, kind of steamy too.
And what a day. It's what we look forward to in terms of the atmosphere. But Garrett Cole took the crowd right out of this game. And now, if Grilly comes in, shuts it down, the pressure shifts to the Cardinals because they're looking at Francisco Liriano and that crowd back in Pittsburgh.
Although, as we mentioned earlier, as Russell Martin swings on the first pitch, lifts one into foul territory, and Descalso comes in behind Freeze to take it, and it's a 1-2-3 top of the ninth. As good as Liriano has been against the Cardinals, that's how good young Joe Kelly has been against the Pirates, each 3-0 against their opponent in Game 3 on Sunday. Clint Hurdle just trying to keep him sharp. You got an off day tomorrow. If there is a 5th game, there's an off day between the 4th and 5th game, so you can use your bullpen a little bit differently during this stretch than during the regular season.
He was leading the league in saves when he went on the DL with a forearm strain, but he's back again. Actually, he pitched against these Cardinals in the 2006 World Series when he was with the Tigers.
Holiday leads it off, followed by Adams and Molina. Really made the All-Star team this year. Then Mark Melancon filled in for him. He's returned to convert 3 of 4 save opportunities in September after coming off the DL. The Pirate bullpen ranks either 1st or 2nd in the National League in every significant bullpen category. A huge part of Pittsburgh's success this year, as they raised the Jolly Roger 94 times during the regular season, then won the wild card game and are on the verge of evening this division series.
Well, that surprises me. 6 runs down and swing at a 2-0 pitch. Guy hadn't thrown a strike. Might have to explain that Jolly Roger. Fans that aren't aware of that. The flag they raise in Pittsburgh.
Pirate insignia. And kind of a rallying cry after each victory. Raise the Jolly Roger.
Jason and the Pirates' second baseman, Neil Walker, both of their dads. Jason's dad, Steve, Neil Walker's dad, Tom, who we've talked about, both members of the Tigers in the mid-'70s. Steve is a right-hand pitcher like Tom Walker was.
The 2-2 to Holiday. Popped out of play. Holiday has faced Grilli 6 times in his career without a hit, and he struck out 4 of those 6 at-bats. And a called strike 3. Wally Bell is one of those plate umpires who likes a moment of suspense before he clues the crowd in, so we've learned to wait as the afternoon has gone along.
And Matt Holliday has not been particularly happy with some of his called strike 3s. That certainly had the strike zone and was high enough.
So now Matt Adams, who has a single and 3 trips.
Now they really put the shift on for Matt Adams. David Ortiz type shift.
Third baseman Alvarez tucked near second base. Shortstop Barmas on the first base side of second. Second baseman Neil Walker in shallow right field. And the first baseman Morneau backed up deep behind the bag. Down 6 runs. Even Adams, who is hardly a speedster, if he could bunt fair, if he could just get it down fair, he beats it out.
That's how much they shift. A 95-foot shift for the third baseman, where they would normally be playing. So that is really an exaggerated shift. And that's why. Good fastball, and he still pulled it 20 feet foul.
Adams grew up in Phillipsburg, Pennsylvania as a Pirate fan, then later attended Slippery Rock. So he's taking some ribbing from his buddies back home, where he once rooted for the Pirates. He and his teammates now trying to send them home. But apparently today is not going to advance that objective. Looks like after losing 9-1 yesterday, the Pirates will bounce back, leading 7-1 here in the 9th. And by the way, we should give credit where credit is due. Greg Brown, who works the Pirates games on TV and radio, is the guy who always says, raise the Jolly Roger after a victory. And that has become a true rallying cry in Pittsburgh. Grilli to Adams on 1-2, and the count levels. Adams strokes one to center. McCutchen to the track, to the wall, and it's off the top of the wall. Adams will be content with a double, narrowly missing a home run.
Boy, almost Torrey Hunter-like was Andrew McCutchen. Timed his jump perfectly, and ball just falls over his outstretched glove, cushions himself against the padded wall, thank goodness, and Adams has a stand-up double.
Missing a home run literally by inches. So that brings up Molina, who accounted for the Cardinals' only run with a fifth-inning homer to center off Cole.
It's probably the best thing for Jason Grilli. Certainly wouldn't like to give up 4 or 5 runs, but you seldom see closers as sharp with a big lead as you do when they come in with a 1-run lead. That same, I don't know what it is, the same intensity is not there.
Gets ahead of Molina, 0-2. The double by Adams was just the Cardinals' 4th hit, and Adams has half of them. He has a single and a double. Beltran had a first-inning double, and Molina had the 5th-inning home run. 7-10-0 for the Pirates with 9 left. 1-4-1 with 4 left for the Cardinals.
Well, they've done exactly what you hope to do as a road team when you're down 1. You score first, get on the board, take the crowd out of it, and get a solid pitching performance from your starter. And the Pirates certainly did all of those. And then capitalized on some mistakes by Mike Matheny's team in the field.
Well, there's that delayed call once again.
And the delayed look and the reaction from the Cardinal dugout. Knee high outside corner.
So Grilli has fanned 2 in the 9th with a double by Adams in between. And John Jay is all that stands between the Pirates and evening this series. Jay has grounded out and struck out twice. Skies this one into shallow left. Marte over. Doesn't have a play. Sunday, Game 3. Liriano against Kelly. Monday, Game 4. Charlie Morton against Michael Wacha. And then if there is a Game 5 back here in St. Louis, Wainwright for sure for the Cardinals, and we assume A.J. Burnett, who has been treated rudely by St. Louis the last few times he's faced them, we assume he'll get another shot at it if there is a Game 5.
Could be Garrett Cole. Be on his 5th day.
Swing and a miss, strike 3. Grilli comes in, strikes out the side, and that will be an interesting decision if there is a Game 5. And as the Pirates raise the Jolly Roger in St. Louis.
Well, they did it very impressively, as they've done all year. Good starting pitching. Solid relief. Yeah, he'd be on the 5th day.
Yeah, with an off day in between Games 4 and 5. Garrett Cole would have 4 days rest, and certainly he looked a whole lot better today than Burnett did yesterday.
Well, I think the crushing blow for Lance Lynn was when Pedro Alvarez got on top of that high fastball and just hit a bullet over the center field wall. They took advantage of a couple of Pirates miscues and an error here, but they did error here and there, but they did everything a team does to play winning baseball. And congratulations from their manager getting it back to 1-1.
You know, Clint Hurdle told us before the game, I've been around a lot of high-spirited people. I played for Whitey Herzog in Kansas City and in St. Louis. I played for Dick Hauser in Kansas City, Davey Johnson at one point for the Mets. And he said stoicism may work for some people. It isn't really part of my makeup.
No.
So, you know, win or lose, we're going to be high-spirited here.
Yeah, he's very enthusiastic.
Sam Ryan is down on the field, and I believe Pedro Alvarez is with her.
That's right, Bob. Pedro, this team has shown resiliency all year long. Your manager, Clint Hurdle, said you really got to just forget about what happened yesterday. How key was it to come out and get on the board first?
Well, it's huge. I mean, they're a team that always capitalizes on mistakes, and their team is always aggressive, trying to score runs, and as long as we can put the pressure on them, I like our chances.
And you scored first after your double and a single by your pitcher, Garrett Cole. What did you see there?
Well, I mean, he's competed at the plate all year. He's a pretty good hitter, not just on the mound, but in the box. And actually a lot of his at bats have contributed to some big W's, and that's just the nature of his game. He just goes out there and competes.
Oh, and he was pretty good on the mound too today.
Yeah.
The 2-run home run by you off of Lance Lynn, your second hit of the game. What did you see there?
It was a fastball up.
And a line drive home run by you. Now, to go home with the series tied up at 1 in that atmosphere, what does it mean to this team?
We're definitely looking forward to it. Obviously that's a very tough team. We're playing across the field over there, and we got to just go out there and compete. But we're looking forward to playing at home in front of our fans.
Congratulations, Pedro.
Thank you.
Bob, back to you.
Sam, thanks. Kitty, final thoughts?
Well, I think, again, Pedro got the crushing blow with that 2-run home run, and I think the atmosphere that you mentioned Clint Hurdle creates is not panic after the devastating loss yesterday, and they just came out and sort of played the way they played all year. Good pitching, surprising. They don't usually have this kind of a offensive display. They don't score as many runs as the Cardinals, but they got timely hits today.
Well, postseason play in St. Louis is almost a given.
Yeah.
The Pirates haven't been playing meaningful games in October since 1992, but despite that disparity, these two teams are familiar with each other as divisional rivals, and now they have played 21 games this year, and the Pirates have won 11 and the Cardinals have won 10. So in the here and now, despite the respective histories of the franchises, in the here and now, the Pirates are not intimidated by the Cardinals.
And if you're a baseball fan, I don't care what team you pull for, you might want to tune in and see that Game 3 of Pittsburgh and St. Louis, because that crowd there will be something worth seeing.
Just like the other night in Cleveland for the wild card game,
right,
which the Indians didn't win, but it had been a while, not as long as it had been for the Pirates, but they came out of nowhere. They grabbed a postseason berth, and the Indians fans responded. It's been building for a longer period of time in Pittsburgh throughout this season. They kind of flirted with it the last 2 years before the second half collapses. This year they kept it going, and obviously Pittsburgh for a long time has been a football town, at various times a hockey town, but they have a deep and meaningful baseball history, and a lot of that has been rekindled this year, and a whole lot of people are going to be walking across the Clemente Bridge and filing into PNC Park for Game 3 on Sunday. Liriano against Kelly. Thank you, Jim. Coming up next, full highlights and analysis of today's action on MLB Tonight, presented by Bacardi Oakart with Greg Amsinger, Harold Reynolds, and Bill Ripken. So, for Jim Cott and Sam Ryan, Bob Costa saying so long from St. Louis, where the Pirates evened the series by beating the Cardinals 7-1. Thanks for watching this Division Series telecast on MLB Network, presented by Geico. So long, everybody.